We are anchoring this session on behalf of two chairs that were unavoidably absent. I'm here with my colleague here. My name is Professor Ewona, Executive Director of Environmental Monitoring and Energy Research Group at the University of Cross River State, Calabar, Nigeria.
Once again, Dr. Alani, University of Lagos.
Well, yesterday I raised an issue on a lighter note, and I think I got an answer as I was reflecting on that question. I'm sure you still remember the question. We're told in the conference that this venue is a hotspot for air pollution, and I raised a concern why the organizers should bring us to this point, maybe leading us like sheep to the slaughter. But over the night, as I thought over it, I seemed to get an answer. And my answer to it is that the taste of the pudding is in the eating. So, ladies and gentlemen, we will go to this session, and we're going to be as quick as possible. We have about 4 presenters, and we will be anchoring on utilizing various communication strategies to increase public engagement on air pollution. So very quickly, I'll ask my colleague to introduce the first presenter.
So the first presenter is Ms. Maclina Birungi. She'll be speaking on enabling participatory approaches to co-designing of air quality management solutions. So Maclina, when you come, you introduce yourself better.
Hello, good morning, everyone. My name is Maclina Birungi. I work with AirQo. We've heard a lot from a number of my colleagues in the previous sessions. So I take lead on the marketing and communications of AirQo, Makerere University. And it's a very big privilege for me to be speaking to you today about utilizing various communication strategies to increase public engagement. And in particular, I picked interest in different participatory approaches that we use in co-designing air quality solutions, especially at the grassroots level. So I'll start by sharing a few insights from a research. We had a media training recently and we were privileged to gain some insights from Dr. Melina Pletz from New York University from a research that she had conducted with us, trying to find out the level of understanding of air quality awareness in Uganda. So approximately 4,000 respondents participated in this research, and it was an online research, so recruitment was through social media. First, the beliefs about the causes of outdoor air pollution. It was noted that most respondents know something about the causes of air pollution. They were able to identify rubbish burning, unpaved roads, vehicle exhausts, factory emissions, among others. So they underestimated the impact of unpaved roads, but also overestimated the impact of the role of factories. And then a majority of them also underestimated the health impacts of air pollution. If you could move a little bit very fast, I just want to run this over. Most of them have not heard about AQI, and I'll tell you why I bring this very quickly. So most of them have not heard about the AQI or the PM 2.5 we talk about, but however, they have high interest in air quality information. And then this is a very common question that we also ask in the communities. Who do you think is responsible for improving air quality in your community? And majority of them think it's their leaders, the government. So the key takeaways here, underestimation of health effects of bad air quality, fair understanding of the causes, but there are so many knowledge gaps that need to be closed. Very few people are aware of the technical terms that we use, but there was a growing concern about air pollution. So let's look at the existing challenges when it comes to awareness raising. These are some of the challenges that we have faced, but there are also some of the challenges that are in the market. So of course, limited resources and capacity in running air quality awareness campaigns. Most of the budgets are very limited when it comes to awareness, knowledge gaps. So there are a number of knowledge gaps in air quality data dissemination. Today during the media training that I was listening in, there's a story about Ghana having been named as one of the most polluted countries in the world because of just an article that went out with just one data set. So those are some of the challenges. And then poor messaging concepts. In most cases, when we are communicating about air quality, we are not able to segment our different audiences accordingly. So we speak to everyone in the same way. And then limited usage of available communication mediums. When we look at the advertising industry for the profit sector, they are very intentional and they're very intentional in targeting which particular segment to communicate to and how to reach out to them. And I think we need to also adapt that. Next slide, please. So these are some of the communication approaches that we use at AirQo. So we don't just use one. We'll have traditional media, we'll do a lot of online. We have the capacity building workshops and stakeholder convenings, data access trainings. And then we also have programs like the Community Champions Program. So my main interest and topic of discussion is under participatory approaches. So with participatory approaches here, we are saying that let's involve the communities, let's involve the different stakeholders right from inception. So they need to be part of the solution and not just receivers. So some of the initiatives that we have on ground that majority of us can pick a leaf from, because this is actually what is working so well for us, the participatory approaches. If we are to measure the impact of what we do. So one, we have school engagements like a STEM for Air. With this, you can see we have air quality clubs. We have so far recruited over 2,000 students and teachers under the STEM for Air initiative. We run different campaigns like data challenges, and then we also partner with Zindi, among others, on data challenges. So here they are interacting directly with the data, so they are able to understand it and make use of it. Next, please. We have the Community Champions Program. So the Community Champions Program is a very good bottom-up approach where we are able to get communities to take action through ownership. So they are able to acknowledge what are some of the causes of air pollution, bad air quality in my community, and what can I do about it from an individual perspective. So far we have over 1,500 community champions in Uganda and scaling up across Africa, where we also have partnerships and networks. This is an example of a champion that says when she got sensitized about the effects of air pollution, she adopted better cooking practices. It's common practice for many households to use the charcoal stove for cooking. But then after you sensitize these community members on what is the direct effect their habits are having on them, their family, and their overall community, there is that level of acceptance because you have brought the problem from being very national, very big, and you're bringing it directly to them as individuals. So we use influential members of the community who are able to influence behavior in their communities. So this is these are village health teams, and this is an environment officer in Ginger. We have capacity building through data access trainings, where we get to train so many different groups, right from government, different community-based organizations. So here we try to enable them, again, training of trainers, we try to enable them understand what does the data mean and how can you make use of that data how can you make use of the data for action? So how do we translate these numbers, these complicated numbers into action? 2 minutes to go. We also partner with community-based organizations, and these are also very sustainable. They're also very sustainable ways of creating awareness. So we also partner with community-based organizations at the informal sector who you know, within their context, they understand their air pollution challenges. So we work with them to come up with trainings and to come up with concepts that can help the community. So here we were partnering with Auto Safety Uganda in delivering a training on catalytic converters, because these are stolen so much in Kampala. Awareness activations, we have we'll go on the streets, high traffic areas, get people to access this message. They're gonna share this on social media. Before you know it, it's blowing up. Next, please. We have the cleanups. So if you have like the mayor of a city joining a cleanup, deep down in the community, the residents in this community will get a sense of guilt. You are dumping this rubbish and your mayor is coming to clean it up for you. So these are the examples that we also set up, working together with government and so many other partners. Targeted campaigns, you can see the tree planting campaigns, media campaigns, and we're also very privileged to take part in the Kampala Car-Free Day that was launched early this year. Next, please. So some of the lessons we have learned that can also be scalable for other members here that are so interested in picking up this approach is that if you include communities right from inception, it's easy to get acceptance. So knowledge mapping, for instance, trying to find out, don't think for them, sit in a boardroom and say, these are the problems of this community. So we do needs assessments. We try to find out their perceptions, and it's from that knowledge that we're able to identify the gaps, and then we're able to know how do we target them, what kind of messaging concept do they need, how do we work with them? We work with local city governments we work with the city government in also gaining acceptance of our programs at the grassroots level. We align with existing community and government structures, in a sense that if you find their village health teams, if you find the different leadership structures, we blend in with them. We don't try to create new. And then the air quality champions, these ones also doing an amazing job at a grassroots level. Next slide, please. I know a lot of my colleagues, you've seen these pictures so much, but what I want to talk about integrating air quality data, because this is our latest communications product, integrating air quality data into media programming. So like I said, we have a limitation. Being a nonprofit, we have a limitation of resources. So we find creative ways in which we can communicate the message. And one of the products we got, we embraced, was pitching to one of the leading TV stations in Uganda. So this is a win-win. We are pioneering dissemination of air quality data. So you tell them, just like CNN does it on weather updates, you can also be a pioneer. What does it do to your brand as a TV station? And we got a buy-in, an immediate buy-in, by the way, where we are able to they broadcast air quality daily updates, forecasts on their prime news. So what does that mean? People without access to mobile phones, people with no access to social media are able to access this data, because this is a national TV. And then also it goes beyond just talking about the data sets, but they are able to also explain that and how much would that cost you if you are paying for it. So these are some of the available tactics that we can embrace as we communicate air quality data. Thank you. I'll just stop here.
Thank you. Maclina, you've done a good job here. I think we can give her a better round of applause. We will at this point call on Dr. Kayla, who will be talking to us on communicating air sensor data, co-designing visualizations through the Brit London Community Program. You're welcome, Kayla.
Thank you so much. I'm just going to set a timer for myself because I don't want to go over. My name is Kayla Schulte, and it is a great honor to be here with you all. Thank you so much for welcoming me. And I'm just really, really grateful to have the opportunity to connect with so many of you. So I'm a postdoctoral research associate at Imperial College London in the UK, and I co-facilitate and deliver the Breathe London program, which some of you may have heard about, and really excited to be connecting with a sister program, Breathe Accra, and hopefully many more. So I'm going to be talking about how we are evolving the way that we're visualizing data that's emerging from the sensors that you're putting all this hard work into. So next slide, please. I'm curious. You ever seen any of these before? Any of these look familiar? Maybe a little bit familiar. I'm curious, has anyone ever asked a non-air pollution scientist to explain back to them what this means? Yeah. Has anyone ever asked a non-air pollution scientist, or even asked yourself, when looking at this, how does this align with the way that you experience air pollution in your body? And I want you to think through that a little bit as we continue on in the presentation. Next slide, please. So just as a bit of background, we're going to talk about how we communicate about air pollution and its effects. We've already seen a lot of this at this conference. It's quite scientific, and it's specialist, and it requires a certain type of education, a certain type of time and patience, and a certain type of interest in order to engage with the information in the way that it is currently being presented. And I'm going to be a little bit critical here. It's not yet at the point or in the framework that it needs to be to reach a diversity of different audiences. So one of the ways that we can try and get to that point, which we've already heard so many great examples of, are through co-design principles. So by leveraging participatory methods. And I've heard a lot of talk about co-design and participatory methods, and I just want to make the point that there are different degrees of it. So, it's nice to kind of say, we're going to engage the community and we're going to co-design with the community. But it really is, I just want to emphasize what Maclina said and what Professor Rosa said. It is about walking along, bringing key groups who have a vested interest in the outcomes of the sensors that you're installing, the data that you're producing, and having them walk alongside you throughout the journey. That's the way that we bring in all of the different types of knowledges that are going to be key to making change. Next slide, please. So how have we gone about that in the Breathe London program? Just a little overview, and I know Ik spoke about it yesterday. I'm not going to really talk about the technical aspects, but if you have questions about that, can get in touch. It was launched in 2020 after a pilot study conducted by another group with different sensors. We ended up transitioning to Clarity nodes, and now we have a total of 421 nodes. I'm specifically going to talk about the community program. So that's the dimension of the program that I help run. And we have 60 free sensors that were made available to communities and individuals across London. Those are funded by Bloomberg Philanthropies and Clean Air Fund. And what we did was we had 3 rounds of applications where we invited different groups to apply for the sensors. And what goes along with that is support from yours truly and my team to talk through the data, to interpret the data, to help facilitate the aims of those groups that applied for the sensors. And we also convened an independent panel of community organizations, local authority representatives, health organizations and institutes to select those awardees. So it wasn't our department. Also, another thing to note, in terms of the convening and the delivery of the Breathe London program, there was some talk about the relationship between government and academic institutions. And in the case of the City of London, a university leads the measurement. So it's an interesting situation where the government kind of comes to the university and has them lead the measurement because we are the ones that have kind of the concentration of expertise. But at the same time, there's some movement. So people who maybe worked in government now work at universities and vice versa. We're not stagnant. So there is this kind of flow, and the community exists in kind of multiple different institutions. And I just want to point out, there's a little sign there. We have these nice signs underneath the nodes so you can get some information about what is this sensor, what is this thing up on the pole. Next slide, please. So in the implementation of the community program, there are a couple key components that I want to highlight. One, we have a set of community guidelines. So whenever we're getting together, whether it's in person or online, we make sure to come to the space with respect, with equal participation, and ready to engage in active learning. So, it's just really nice to kind of put this front and center. I like to do it with all of my projects just so that folks know that there's, no space for foul language and like heavy criticism and that sort of thing. The groups get to select where they want the nodes. So Ik picked up on this yesterday. This is the core of the Breathe London community program, where now communities can lead where they want data from. What I've heard here is that, we're still in this situation where we don't have reference monitoring stations. You're still kind of deploying many, many sensors. Hopefully one day soon, there will be an opportunity where the location and the placement of the node can be guided by the community interests. Do they want it near a school where their kids are spending most of their time? Do they want it near the market where people are spending most of their time? And then, yeah, continuing shared learning. So we have many, many different types of events that are designed to fit schedules and needs of many different groups, because not everybody's going to be able to participate online. Not everybody's going to be able to participate in person. Not everybody's comfortable with social media and the internet. So we make sure to have a diversity of opportunities to connect. And yeah, that takes a lot of work, takes a lot of effort, but it is important to ensure that when funding is allocated, that there are funds that go to supporting those types of activities, because otherwise the data doesn't have any legs. So key learnings to date that we've kind of rolled into visualizations, I'll get to visualizations now, is that no data is not intuitive. The community group members that I work with tell me loud and clear, doesn't work for me. AQI doesn't make sense, doesn't tell me what I need to know. Yes, okay, it tells me that the air is unhealthy, but what am I supposed to do about that? What am I supposed to do about that? So I'm constantly getting this message. And we decided to launch a work stream to address that. So next slide, please. Yeah, so the research question is, how do we generate intuitive, action-oriented visualizations that effectively communicate local air quality conditions? And this is screenshots from the Breathe London website. As you can see, we're not there yet. And that's why we keep getting complaints from the community members that we work with, but we hear them and we want to move together on this journey. So next slide, please. So we implemented this visualization work stream involving participatory mixed methods. So we convened focus groups and we launched a survey, and we used user analytics data so we can see what parts of the websites and what information sources people are using most frequently. We have focus groups and surveys. So the survey is a quick way that people could give feedback, and the focus group was a little bit more involved. And I want to say it's really important to have that diversity of data collection, because not everybody has the time to dedicate, their lives to a focus group. But in order to kind of maximize the diversity of input and knowledge, we launched this quick survey with visual options so that people could very quickly give feedback and participate in the process. And then conducted a structured content analysis to identify key audiences of importance and come up with these audience groupings that we can then start to tailor visualizations and messages to speak to them in line with the group aims. Next slide, please. So yeah, we launched this workshop, or we held a workshop. This was a longer form session where we started to think through what are some creative ways of communicating data. We brought in specialists who work on visualization. We brought in members of the community program group, and we talked through it. So you can see down here some creative examples that we discussed. You might have seen particle falls. This was at one of the COP conferences several years ago. That's tire wear. We heard a presentation about tire wear. So that's tire wear from one type of bus for one day. And then the cubes show the different size. You can actually see it. This is knitting the air. So one of the community program groups in Breathe London has been knitting their data. So the really cool thing about all these examples is they're underpinned by data. There are cool, weird, creative ways to visualize information that's coming from these sensors that you're putting all this hard work and energy into. And the great thing about knitting the air is that, they'll just sit on the side of the street and they'll be knitting, and people come up to them and say, well, what is this? And that prompts a conversation, and they can get into a dialogue, point them to additional information. And it's been a tremendous success so far. They're starting to get media attention. It's just really, really cool. Oh, there's also sound. So I've heard that radio is big here. There are a couple projects that are transforming air pollution data into music and sound. So, again, another data-based, data-rooted way of communicating information. Next slide. Okay, right. So what we're hearing is visualizations must be simple. They have to be focused on health, also health in the short and long term. This is a big thing that's coming out in conversations with the UK government that I'm involved in right now with colleagues, where the AQI is giving you a daily value. Yes, that's crucial to understand if you have a health condition. However, your long-term exposure is ultimately contributing to adverse health outcomes. So the government in the UK has been talking about shifting to kind of a short-term and a long-term messaging strategy. So we're trying to kind of hop on that train and think through that as well. Make sure to always include contextualizing information, coming up with general audience categories. So these are the categories that we came up with groups in London. This might look a little different. It will likely look a little different for Accra and other contexts. And then consider capacity related challenges because people don't have time and energy to dedicate to this. You need to kind of loop them in a creative way. And part of that is linking with champions that Maclina was talking about. I mean, that is really a key takeaway, and I can't emphasize that enough. Next slide. So this is some of what we've developed so far. We're not quite at the stage where we're rolling it out onto the Breathe London website. We're still in that iterative co-design process. You're kind of catching me in this moment, but we're constantly doing that. We're constantly going back, evaluating, discussing, talking, trialing, and then reevaluating. It's kind of this iterative, continuous process that we're engaged in. So here we're focusing on trying to simplify the way that we're communicating pollution concentrations that are coming from the sensors, showcasing a binary, whether or not it crosses the WHO daily limit guideline. And of course, this would be different in the case of Accra because it would probably be every day that you would have this overage. But in that case, you might focus on kind of the long-term pollution to showcase just how large the burden is of being over WHO guidelines. So there are ways to kind of really simplify and condense the message. Personalization, so having people be able to identify what groups they're a part of, then have the information kind of tailored to your needs. And then, yeah, just keeping it very simple, pictorial, visual. But yeah, bringing it simplified, making it simplified. Yes, sorry, next slide. All right, so we've been talking about the importance of data quality, and I implore you all to start thinking about the quality of air pollution communications. It's essential. You know, once you get reliable data and once you get the data down, it's nothing without communicating it and bringing everybody along the way. You know, bringing everybody who's affected and involved. Listening, being patient, and being open to criticism. I know it can be challenging at times, but it's so important. It's the only way we can move forward and grow. Employing mixed methods, ensuring to provide background, context, and information. And yeah, I mean, just I'll finish here, but I'll say it's been a real pleasure to be here. I'm really, really keen to connect with anybody who is interested in exploring opportunities for collaboration. If you can just go to the next slide. Yeah, this is everybody. Thank you to the funders. Thank you to the resident participants who are really pushing the paradigm for monitoring, changing the way that we monitor and govern air pollution in London, and for all of your hard work here. It's been tremendous. So yeah, please do reach out, get in touch. I would be more than happy to discuss any potential collaborations. Oh, and the last slide, if you just, sorry. I had a paper published last week. It's in the UK context, but it showcases motivations for engaging with air pollution information. So if you're interested in that, I encourage you to check that out as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kayla. That was an exciting presentation. Please, Maclina, can you please take the hot seat over there? And please join her. Thank you very much. We'll be going to the next session, and this will be taken by my colleague.
Yes, thank you, Prof. We're going to listen to Monika, Dr. Monika Kamkuemah from University of Pretoria. She's speaking on youth-driven citizen science for healthy, climate-resilient cities.
Thank you, everyone. I'm Monika Kamkuemah. I'm a postdoctoral fellow in the Department of Architecture and Innovation Africa at the University of Pretoria. That's in Gauteng, close to Johannesburg. So I'm happy I saw someone from Johannesburg presenting earlier as well. So today I'm going to be talking about youth-driven citizen science for healthy, climate-resilient cities, particularly highlighting the Citizens for Clean Air campaign. So Vision Urban Better. So Urban Better is a hub and a research center based here at the university. And as part of our vision, we envision that by 2030, we'll have climate healthy and climate resilient cities that take into account health into the design and urban planning. And we hope that by 2063, we can build in participatory mechanisms to support intergenerational decision-making in cities. So I'm very happy that my previous two co-panelists highlighted participatory mechanisms and themes. And for this topic particularly, I'll be talking about youth participation. So Urban Better is an Africa-led global urban health practice and learning collaborative. We recently established, basically last year in 2022, and we hope to be an advocacy platform that connects and mobilizes individuals, communities, and organizations to future-proof health and health-proof the future of cities. So the Citizens for Clean Air, which I'll be talking about, is our flagship initiative. So what we envision is a dual approach to participatory air quality management, which incorporates key stakeholders, including local governments, academia, the research community, and civil society to shape and inform the development of air quality management systems. And we believe in this being a collective decision-making process, both from the siting of the sensors, the collection of the real-time data, and the interpretation thereof. So we see citizen scientists, who are primarily youth, as being an integral part of the air quality management system. I'll go into more detail of this as I talk. So Urban Better Citizens is a participatory measurement approach, and which then also informs participatory governance. So we see, we believe in precision advocacy, so advocacy that's informed by data, so that we then have a citizen sensing data infrastructure that will support youth-led participatory measurements. And we see this as a dynamic process as cities are constantly evolving, especially in our setting. So we thereby hope to measure dynamic exposures and then use this then to generate evidence that will inform advocacy and practice. So this is our key mantra, harnessing the power of youth and vitality of physical activity to then unleash the potential of citizen science to make our urban spaces better. So one thing I wanted to highlight is that air pollution is now the second largest cause of death in Africa. In fact, we just had a report that came out yesterday from the Global Climate Health Alliance that showed that the Global South has been making some contributions towards its NDC commitments, but we still have the highest rates of mortality associated with air pollution. And then on top of that, 16.3% of global death from air pollution actually occur in Africa, despite Africa being the youngest continent. So young people in Africa are disproportionately affected by the health consequences of air pollution, both ranging from a higher risk of respiratory diseases, cardiovascular issues, and mental health, stress and anxiety linked to poor air quality. So what does that then highlight for us? We see that young people in Africa have become more aware of environmental issues, including air pollution, and they are now more politically engaged and have become advocates for change, as was highlighted in our campaign. So as Urban Better, we see citizens as being citizen scientists that aspire. So they use data to shape a new narrative, which then informs the design of urban spaces. And they inspire their peers and their communities by generating data stories. For example, we used physical activity running last year to generate data stories about health and climate risks in public space, including air pollution and built environment risks associated with access to physical activity and mobility. And thus, they then conspire with others to build a movement that's equipped as effective change agents. So they then increase the demand for healthy, climate resilient public spaces, including spaces that are clean, have clean air, and are conducive to engaging in physical activity. So basically what we did was running experiments, literally. So we ran across 3 cities and we used citizen science and technology for advocacy for clean air. So this is the design process that we took. That was a co-design process that we had in collaboration with youth citizen scientists. They were recruited from 3 cities, Cape Town, Lagos, and Accra, and they attended a 2-day workshop where they learned about the significant harms to human health, as well as the economic impacts of ill health due to air pollution. They then by highlighting these like statistics and data around the impact of air pollution on health, they then realized the crucial role that they could play in highlighting the effects of bad air in their communities. And then they co-designed running routes and engaged hundreds of their peers to join them along these routes, where as they ran, they wore a wearable air quality monitor. It wasn't the most accurate one, because we later realized it wasn't really built for the temperate, like for our climates in the 3 cities where we worked. But it was the first step in actually just collecting the data and forming a basis for saying, what do we actually need in terms of having an air quality measurement management system in our cities. They also used an app to capture multimedia. So they captured aspects of their built environment that they perceived to be sources of clean air or sources of polluted air, as well as like health risks they encountered while running, such as uneven pavements or even lack of pavements. And they were then also trained to be effective advocates on storytelling. Because one thing we wanted to highlight was that in different communities, different messaging works differently. So we had to tailor the communication for each community. So at the same time, because we found that a lot of them were active on social media, so we actually harnessed the power of social media to be able to highlight what we found as part of the Citizens for Clean Air campaign. Like if you go on to Twitter or Instagram right now and you Google hashtag Citizens for Clean Air shown here, you'll pick up a lot of the media traction and narratives that we generated since last year. So this is just some of the citizen scientists in the cities. This is one of the citizen scientists who's an elite athlete. So he led a run in his community in Kayla. So Kayla is one of the most dangerous townships in Cape Town. But he managed to actually then garner young people to run along with him and bring emphasis on the issue of not just the other built environment risks, but also the air quality.
Should be rounding up, please.
Next. So this was the citizen scientists in Lagos. They also organized 10 runs around their city in the different neighborhoods, showcasing the vast urban diversities in what is Africa's most populous city. And then the messaging that they generated that you can see on the posters here, they came up with from what they observed and what they thought would be messages that would have an impact or that would be compelling in their communities. So some of them are in Pidgin, like Who They Breathe was something that trended quite widely in Lagos. And after this, we actually also, in preparation for COP last year, we ran a social media activation in November, where all of the citizen scientists organized runs in their communities, and we actually made Clean Air COP27 trend. So these are some of the viral posts, and it was just also an illustration of the power of social media to generate a movement. Next. Okay, so we had a booth at COP27 in the Youth Pavilion. So this actually also took 3 of the citizen scientists with us from each of the cities, and some of our co-partners on the campaign as well. And they had interactions with the COP delegates and showcased what they found in their cities. So as Maclina highlighted, which I found there, is actually something that AirQo does quite well, is harnessing the power of local media or print and online media to highlight air quality and air pollution. So from the beginning, we decided to co-opt or like call in our different media platforms. So we had like an article placement, article placements in Cape Town, in Ghana, and in Lagos, as well as we managed to get a feature on Al Jazeera in October, which also just helped us to elevate and amplify our message. So on top of the runs, so we moved, as we highlighted, that we wanted not only to run, but we wanted to inform advocacy. So we came up with policy prescriptions in each of the 3 cities, as well as like 3 overall messages that the youth felt like that they wanted to call on their leaders for. So most of it was based around having real-time access to data about the air they breathe. And for example, not just having to wait to extract data from a reference monitor, which actually proved difficult in some of the cities. But to have this data in real time so that it could inform their activities and when they would go running, etc. And they also wanted to have a say in decisions that affect their air and the future in their cities. And this is a report we compiled together with assistance from AirQo. So it was a once-off report because it was just based on the data from the runs on one specific day. But what it helped us to highlight was just like how can we tailor the messaging in a way that's like palatable and that's open to people to actually interact with and understand. So some of the lessons we found was that it's feasible to engage young people as citizen scientists to raise awareness, and they want to actually be able to access their data and make sense of it. And the second lesson was there's largely unmet and unheard of demand for healthy public spaces, which include like healthy or clean air within which to live and breathe. So for phase 2 of our campaign, this was a proof of concept last year. So going forward, we're aiming to scale this and amplify it. And we started by establishing citizens hubs in the cities where we work. So we recently established a hub in Lagos, and we're hoping to duplicate the same in Accra next year. And at the same time, we're also building a more robust digital infrastructure or portal that will enable the citizen scientists to interact with their data and then also have access to resources that can train them around what does the air quality data actually mean and how can you be an effective advocate for clean air. So yes, I'd just like to acknowledge the funders that we have, the Clean Air Fund, and our collaborators, including AirQo, University of Cambridge. And I'd like to emphasize that while there are challenges in terms of communicating air quality data and effectively engaging the community, like Maclina highlighted, it's important to do this from the start and to ensure inclusivity in the messaging so that no one gets left behind, especially the majority demographic in our continent who are people under the age of 19. Thank you.
Thank you, Monika. Can we give her a hand of applause? We'll be taking Monika, hope you'll be waiting there because questions will be coming from participants. We'll be taking we'll be taking the last one, which is the role of journalism in increasing public engagement on air pollution, insights from EJN Media Workshop in Nairobi. That will be taken by Dr. Jacqueline Lebukwi.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm Jackie Lidubi from Nairobi, Kenya. I'm a journalist by profession, but currently I work at Internews. Internews is a media development organization. So we train journalists on underreported issues and areas like climate change, environment, air pollution, disability, COVID-19, and any underreported area in our society. So Nairobi, like any other big cities like Accra, suffers from air pollution, and an average of annual PM 2.5 levels in Nairobi are double the WHO guidelines. So next. I'm just specifically going to talk on how journalism can help us to improve our air pollution awareness. So media can shape our perceptions, media informs, and media influence policy on air pollution. Also, media business models often prioritize stories with commercial appeal. So in most media houses, stories of climate change, air pollution doesn't have a commercial appeal, or political stories have commercial appeal. Right now, if you watch all international media or national media is about Israel, Palestinian, Ukraine, talk about Russia, all that, but you rarely see stories of air pollution. So air quality complicities pose challenges for environmental journalists. We don't understand those particulate matter 2.5. I'm a journalist. I've been practicing journalism for a very long time. I just came to learn about this when now I joined climate journalism. So next. So before we did our training in Nairobi, we did what we call a media scan. We just did a quick research on the insights of air pollution in Nairobi. And we found out there are few in-depth media stories on air pollution. Actually, there were only 2 stories in Nairobi that mentioned about air pollution in around 1 year. And then journalists face challenges. I've talked about knowledge gaps, resource constraints. Those were some of the challenges that we found out through our media scan. Next. So how do we do this bridging the gap? How are we bridging the gap? So I work for Internews, and Internews has an art journalism network. We only work for environment in this department. So we joined a consortium, which is Clean Air Catalyst, and we are working with other partners like Vital Strategies. USAID is our funder, World Resource Institute, EDF, and we come together to improve the understanding of the need for clean air solutions in low and middle income countries. So far, we've done a pilot project in Jakarta, Indore, and then Nairobi was the last pilot. So we, as Internews, we come in to provide a media training. So we do a 3-day training, whereby the first day our partners come in and talk about the health effects of air pollution. Scientists, academicians, everyone come about and talk about that. So that way we bridge the knowledge gap the journalists face. Next slide. So, and these are the barriers, and maybe they've been talked by my other colleagues in general, but for journalists, there are difficulties accessing air pollution information because they don't have linkages with experts. Like even in this conference, this is just the last day, and this is the last day we had a journalism training, but journalists were in a separate room. So journalists don't associate with scientists. Scientists think journalists will represent them, so they will not invite them. They'll put them in a separate room, maybe given some few minutes to ask questions and no one to guide them even around. And then safety concerns. Some of the areas where pollution they have cartels, and even government will not really like what journalists will report. So when journalists around ask for information, they will not get that information. And maybe when they write an in-depth investigation on an air pollution story, they will also even face threat from the government officials. And then restricted access to air pollution hotspots, like in Kenya, we have somewhere Dandora, and I'll show you a short clip on that. And then denial of crucial air quality data by organizations. During this workshop, even we had that discussion, but journalists now started understanding why maybe the AirQo may not want to give the raw data because maybe they will be misquoted. So because they didn't have like a connection, but after the training, they will understand why maybe organization will not just put out your raw data and give it to you to report. And then limited media budgets for air pollution. I started by saying media houses will prefer commercial, entertaining, and political stories, but not air pollution. So they will not fund you to go in a far area to do an investigative piece on air pollution. Next. So we did, what we normally do, we make a call, we invite journalists to apply. So for the Nairobi conference workshop, we had 14 males and 16 females. And then we had key speakers from our partners, WRI, Nairobi County Government, USAID, scientists, academicians, everyone talking about air pollution, the sources, the impacts, and the solutions that are there. Next. So after in the workshop, the objectives are mostly to strengthen knowledge and skills of air pollution, to empower journalists with tools for gender-sensitive reporting, and activities as I have stated, expert sessions, discussions, and field trips. So the first day it is experts. The second day, next. The second day we go to real-world observation, where we take journalists to location. So for this conference, we went to City Cabanas, which is one of the most highly populated bus terminus in Nairobi, where we were able to observe the vehicular pollutants and even women cooking at the road, all the kinds of pollution. And later we went to Nairobi University Department of Nuclear Science, and we were able to be taken through the census by Mose. I saw Mose somewhere here, and the journalists were able to report about this. This is the first time they were even thinking that there was an air sensor. And even when we went there, I was telling the lecturers at the department, I worked for the Kenya Broadcasting Corporation for like 15 years. I passed through University of Nairobi every day, but I've never known they have an air sensor. And I'm a journalist, a senior journalist for that matter. Next. So for the reflections of the journalists that day, after the training. They said they realized there are a variety of pollutants. So when they were thinking about pollution, we just think about carbon dioxide, nothing about methane. We are hearing about PM 2.5 the first day, but the scientists were very patient with us to explain in depth so that journalists can be able to generate stories. And then there is this Bosco, who is a journalist at a local community radio station in Mukuru, which is near Cabanas. He said he passes Cabanas every day, but for the first time he was looking at City Cabanas bus terminus with a very different angle. Now, every time he's passing there, he's looking at the pollution, the vehicle pollution, the cooking, and everything. Next. So how are we evolving the air pollution narrative? So the workshop guided journalists in developing impactful stories, and some journalists said it has really broadened their perspective on air pollution. Next. So stories produced. We had a very intensive session with AirQo, and Gideon was kind enough to come and talk to a journalist, and we did a story of deploying tech on fight of air pollution. And people were thinking, oh, so there are sensors, so we can get data, so we can be able to monitor air in Nairobi, because we involved the journalists, they understood and they wrote about it. We did a story in one of the national newspaper, Standard, Black Gold, the catalytic converters. And when we talked to the mechanics, they didn't know that if they remove this catalytic, they are exposing themselves to air pollution. They just say they just know it is something that makes for them money. They don't even know why the government is arresting them when they don't have these catalytic converters. So I want to play a clip, just some few seconds.
With the impacts of climate change rising, air pollution is becoming the latest threat to human survival. Methane is becoming the biggest driver of global warming as well as a health hazard.
So on a scale of carbon dioxide being 1, or relatively, methane has a 28 times more potential of warming the climate.
Ni kama mimi naishikanga unapata hata kupumua inakushinda. Pata bavu nasikia zikifinyana.
Join our reporter Opicho Chemtai on Monday at 9 p.m. as she unpacks the nightmare that families living around Dandora dump site have to endure as a result of inhaling polluted air.
Thank you, our engineer. So when I started, I was saying some of the challenges the journalists face. Like, you cannot go to Dandora's dam site to report a story. The Kenyans who are in the room will agree, right? There are cartels there, and even the government would want you to go. But after we did this training, we had the Nairobi County government, we had the people on the ground, and they really supported us to do this story. This story was done at the Kenya Broadcasting Corporation, which is the national broadcaster, which you will imagine they won't run such a story. But because the journalists, the editors had understood why air pollution is important, so they are churning out a lot of stories on air pollution. We also taught our journalists on how to use digital media and air pollution awareness. And during the seminar, the whole 3 days, we talk about what is happening and putting tweets out there, because we want to target even the young people who are more much on Instagram, on TikTok, and also to help navigate the challenges of misinformation, because there's a lot of misinformation around air pollution out there. Next, and finally, I think, yeah, so we did so many tweets during that event. Next. So the future of air reporting. So in this conference, what is the way forward? Maybe one of the things I would say, when we have such conferences, let's invite journalists and their mentors from day one. Let them sit with us, listen to what we are saying, report, be on social media, and let us have the word out there. We are doing very wonderful job. I've learned so much about sensors, the importance, but I'm wondering about my journalists in Africa. Do they know all this is happening in this continent? Do we really think journalism play an important role? Yes, it does. And for our organization, we work mostly with the community media houses, because we believe when we work with the community media, is the people in the informal settlements, they are known by their community and they are talking to their community. So it is easier to use the down-top approach instead of top-down approach. When a scientist go to a media house to talk down to people about the research, that is a top-down. But if we empower our journalists, who are the mouthpiece of whatever happens in the society, then we are going to have this air pollution narrative on a higher stage. Next, if there is any other slide. Yeah. So we did so many stories. From 2 stories in a month, we had like 30 stories after our training. And they keep on churning story after a week or 2 weeks just because of one training. So what about if we have 2 or 3 trainings in a year and empower more journalists? So I think that's the end of my presentation. And thank you so much for listening.
Thank you, Jacqueline. You spoke like a journalist, quite engaging, I must confess. We thank you so much for cooperating with us in this session. We will ask all the presenters to be there, and I think Monika is on standby so that we can take questions from participants. I'm sure you've listened so keenly, and there are lots and lots of areas you really want to know something about that was not clear. So I think there's someone there. Okay.
Thank you, Madam Journalist. I've been involved in a lot of program organization, right from undergraduate level. When you go invited a journalist, some of them will be shying away because we are going to talk about science. If you are going to talk about physics, they will tell you they don't understand all this. In fact, there's this psychological, barrier that normally prevents most of them from coming. And sometimes when they come, there's a psychological switch off. Recently, we organized UNOSA, United Nations Office for Outer Space Affairs Conference in Accra. And then we also organized a group on Earth observation, program. A whole national television representative that was there could not understand anything. So coincidentally, I was on my way, to another city called Kumasi, and then we met. And then he was telling me, say, I couldn't understand anything. Please help me. I don't know what to tell my boss. And I had to now engage him, break it down, now relate what we were doing to some local things that they are already familiar with, like galamsey, water pollution here and there related to it, illegal mining and all that. Then they started, Then when I was going, the boss called me for more than 1 hour. I had to take my time and explain everything that we were doing over there. Imagine I didn't listen to what we were doing there. I didn't know what I was going to tell them. And that was what they reported on Ghana television. And so science communication, I think is lacking in most African countries. They don't know how to report science. Yes, I've sat in science communication lectures before and understood, the dynamics of how to break down the science, So we are happy that you understand the science. Not that we don't invite them, we invite them. But sometimes when you invite them, they don't understand the science you are talking about. When we were, I think it's due to stereotyping. When we were growing, they said science people were more brilliant, and they will select the science people, in one class. It's like you are the stars. And then the arts people are the rest. They should go and read this. And so some, from the onset, they tend to have a different perception about science, and they think it is, sorry to say, like rocket science. But science is very friendly. It's anything around us. So science communication, I think we have to organize more science communication workshops. Thank you.
That's more or less a comment.
Yeah.
I think it was more or less a comment.
Yeah, that's true. Science, we fear science. I also fear science. I was telling even people during my PhD study, I got all A's in all subjects, but I think I failed in statistics, but they didn't want to fail me. They gave me a C. just to make me, just to make me. So we fear science, but we know if we have conferences or even we have workshops, we can be able to develop our own champions. If we only have every champion in every media house, then our information will be there. So what we just need to do is to have champions in media houses. Yeah.
Hello. I want to point it out, or I want to let you know that in Nigeria, for example, if you are doing a workshop, a conference, and you are inviting journalists, they will expect something from you, money. So in such a situation, if you don't play along, definitely your program will not be on air. So that is the personal experience I have. Thank you.
And that's why we are saying if we can come up with our own champions. So just know in Nigeria Broadcasting Corporation, there is a Jackie who I invite, they understand air pollution. They are going to report even without being given something, because that is like a calling. Everyone that we've taught on air pollution in Nairobi, they were the African Climate Summit and they were just focusing on air pollution because now they think, breathe, and walk air pollution. So we need to create champions of air pollution in our media houses. Thank you.
Hello, this is a question for, I believe, Kayla. So as you're kind of putting together the various versions of the, pages and things like that, like to what extent are you using analytics and Google Analytics and keywords and to sort of like, assess how people are thinking about air pollution versus air quality versus AQI, all these terms, because, these are all kind of muddled in people's minds and they don't know what they want to know. And that's kind of a way that I found to kind of figure it out a little bit and kind of structure pages, even technically, to kind of target that stuff. So how do you kind of think about that stuff?
So
I'm an SEO guy. So.
Yeah, we use kind of internal analytics. I've used Google Analytics for other sites. But that's just one piece of the pie. I would say really the essential and the kind of the rich insight that I've gotten and I've published about, I can share some papers, comes from interviews and conversations and focus groups. And it reflects just that kind of the terms are a little bit, they're blurred. But I've actually got some findings about what terms return the most, like the highest number of air quality information sources and which sources they return. So I can share some of that with you. But one thing I'll emphasize is that the terminology is being kind of co-produced and also being really driven at this stage by the scientists and by the scientific community. And I do think we need to shift to having that terminology be driven by community members. And, I kind of think to the work that you were presenting, Maclina, about having community champions. And I do hope that we can evolve the language that the words that we have to describe this concept away from, like just being scientific terms. We need more language. We need better language. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Good afternoon. My name is Gwen Smith, and I'm a community member with the organization Community Health Aligning Revitalization, Resilience, and Sustainability in Atlanta, Georgia. As a community member, I would like to thank all of the presenters today for your positions about how to partner with communities and get communication better across. Kayla, I gotta put my glasses on, hold on a second. Kayla, I wanted to say that I do want to follow up with you and talk with you about the work you're doing. And Monika, thank you so much for the work that you're doing. I wanted to make sure that I find out from you the name of the organization for the reporters that you said was an international organization. I don't know if I mentioned, but I'm from Atlanta, Georgia, in the United States of America. Translation is important. I'm working on an air monitoring project with 2B Technologies in Atlanta, and we have a reference monitor, and we're using handheld monitors also. We have taken our community members on an environmental justice tour. I want to say that our assumption was that community members really didn't realize what was impacting their health and the environment. And what we found out was that that was true. They walk in it every day, they look around every day, but they don't know that. I'm inspired, Monica, that now when I go back to Atlanta, I am going to have an environmental justice reporters tour. And I'm going to take the reporters, and I think that's a good idea, just based on what you just said. And I'm excited about that. And then the last thing is that we are working closely with 2B Technologies. Our organization is leading the research. We determined what we wanted to do, and what we're doing is translation. And that is important because the tech speak is not working. And I'm learning about the equipment myself and learning to tech the equipment myself and hoping to teach community members that, but it takes translation. It really, really does. We have to, I recommend you all find somebody in the community, some community organizations to partner with so that the translation can begin. Thank you.
Thank you. Monika, you want to say something?
Thank you for giving me a very beautiful name. I'm Mbiake.
I was confused, sorry. Now.
Yeah, also Monika, I think is very beautiful and it will look good on me. So thank you so much. And learning by seeing is very, very powerful. So it is a good thing that you are going to do that. All the best. Yeah.
Okay, I think Monika will want to say something. Monika, are you there?
Yes, I am. Thank you. So yes, thank you for the comment. So the approach that we're taking now is actually partnering with local organizations. So what we realized last year, we were using a volunteering system. So we basically put out a social media call for you to join us. And there was some fatigue towards the end. So now we're building a model where it will be remunerated, like we're calling it an A side hustle. And we're actually going to have these young people based in local organizations that can support them and mentor them as well. Because to be honest, last year we were 2 people running around 3 cities, which are very far apart geographically. So it wasn't really sustainable. But yeah, I'm very much for having the local organizations and having also then that as a platform for further scaling up, to just then also support then the young people in the initiatives that they'll be doing.
Thank you very much, Monika. I think we'll take one more question. There's somebody here who's been itching to say something. Let me give him a chance.
Yeah. Okay. I want just to invite journalists and to our labs. I want to tell them not to be shy. Come and knock our doors. They are open. You can come and knock our doors. We are now talking about air pollution, but we are doing a lot in our labs. We're working on quantum mechanics, mechanics, classical mechanics, thermodynamics. There's a lot to learn because we don't have time. Sometimes because we are really passionate, okay, about what we are doing, but there's always a simple way to explain things to people.
That's what.
Yeah, because there is this very well-known scientist, Richard Feynman, who said that if you are a good scientist, you must be able to explain in a simple way what you are doing. And this is true. So we can simplify things so that we can really understand it. It's a simple way. It's what is possible. And I want also to invite my colleagues who are here also to tell them that there is a possibility to publish a research article, review article, etc. But there are also news articles that you can also publish in journals like Nature Africa. You can do it a 2-page paper. This is possible. You have also some of the conversation. You can publish an article there. You have also the African news later now. Okay, so there's possibility. You can do it also. Thank you.
Just one. one of my advisors used to tell me the only way you can tell you understand what you're talking about is if you can explain it to your grandmother. And so I think it's not just training journalists to how the science, but we need to be trained how to explain what we know in a language that people can understand. So I think the training activity should go both ways. We need to get trained by the journalists on how to communicate our science, and we need to communicate our science to the journalists. So it shouldn't be a one-way process. We need to make it a two-way process. And I think when you work on interdisciplinary projects, the key factor is humility, understanding the limitations you have and the things you don't know. So I don't know how to communicate well. So I like to be trained.
Yes.
That was a beautiful one. I want to also put our hands together for all the comments and the panelists. We're grateful for giving us this time and for all the answers you've provided. Thank you very much. Let me hand over to Tony at this moment.
Thank you. About 20 years ago, there was a media training class at my university, which I took and benefited a lot. And I recommend to everybody on my team, take the media training, because it helps you communicate to people who don't know science. Okay, so it's lunchtime. There is the opportunity to go and do African print clothes shopping right now. There'll be people going together. So people should come here if they want to do that, and I'll get them on their way. Otherwise, we're adjourned, and the lunch is out on the grass, just like it always is, and it's ready to go. So we'll be back here again at, let's say 2 o'clock. Give us a little more time, 2 o'clock for the wrap up. Thank you.